So yeah, the next topic, if you guys are joining as we speak now, we just completed like 50 minutes of talking about hot exposure and cold exposure with Nate Wenke here. He's here as a guest. He's been on probably, this is his 8th time, I think, or something like that. So you recognize his face, and he's my best friend. He lives right over there. I can almost hear him maybe, but no. So we talked for 45, 50 minutes talking about, the importance of cold exposure, heat exposure, our experience with them, the science, and that's actually going to be on his podcast. And we'll be dropping these episodes at the same time. So you could go to his, listen to the first half, and then here's the second half that you're jumping into now. And just a little bit of just an update, or just an overview to just start us off. It's like we're talking about these 4 different topics for a reason. And I've done an episode back in the past kind of overviewing all 4 of these, but now 6 months later, I've been going down this path personally and doing more research and doing them with Nate also. And just, we wanted to talk about our experience and also just motivate others to try these things out. But I guess the topic is biohacking, and a key term to understand is hormesis, which is like strategically stressing your body in ways. It's like a short duration stressor that is strategic and actually helps increase your stress resilience and increases your longevity in a summary. There's a lot of reasons why it does, but we will talk about why high intensity interval training and also intermittent fasting or time restricted eating will help this longevity, mood, and just health that you're going to feel in your life. And I think the combination of the hot, the cold, the HIIT, and the fasting, those have been things that we've been doing almost every day. You don't always want to do all of them every day, like we've kind of explained in the first half of this episode, but combining these 4 things along with quite a few other things that we probably do, but these 4 we wanted to cover, I feel like I'm the healthiest, almost the least stressed, the happiest, I might say. I don't know. That's kind of hard to say, but either way, life is pretty good when you're engaging in these stressors because life is no longer as stressful because you're adapted. And there's a lot of boosts in dopamine and just mood as well. So It's been very interesting.
No, for sure. And kind of as we talked about previously, there's a big difference between when you engage in these things in an intentional manner with that intentional mindset. It's the basis for cognitive behavioral therapy. It turns out that when you face something voluntarily that scares you, you are able to overcome it. And what doesn't kill you does, in fact, make you stronger. So that'll be a recurring thing here. But these intentional, putting yourself in these situations intentionally where you experience stress can have a lot of positive benefits. And we overviewed hot and cold in the last 2, and now let's get into intermittent fasting and HIIT. Which one did you want to start with?
I will start with let's think. I'm going to start with intermittent fasting because it then ties into exercise in an interesting way.
Yeah.
So yeah, you may have heard of intermittent fasting. There's other terms for it, time restricted eating. There's slight differences, but I guess the type of fasting that I'm going to be talking about, it's not a diet. Someone might hear us say this and think, well, I don't really want to go on a diet. Or it's like, well, this isn't a diet. This has nothing to do with actually what you're consuming. It's more when you're consuming it. And from what I've heard, there's multiple different ways you can do it. But a typical fast, I guess, that's time restricted is a 16-hour fast and an 8-hour period of time in which you're eating. So, you have 24 hours within a day. And if you can reduce the time in which you're eating, there's so many different benefits that can occur. So I guess one of the main things that happens when you reduce your time that you're going to be eating within a day is that you actually deplete the glucose that stores in your liver, which then causes a switch to flip, and then it actually uses the fats and in your fat cells to boost your metabolism and it's something called ketones that are increased within your body. These ketones are formed when there's not enough sugar or glucose within the liver, so it boosts, it kind of uses those fats to boost these ketones throughout your body, which actually just helps with metabolism. And so it's like you're turning your metabolism into an overdrive versus someone who's eating 3 meals a day plus a snack into the night. They're eating probably 12 to 16 hours of that day if they're eating from sunup to sundown. And they're not ever allowing their body to flip that switch and use those and actually burn that fat. And that's why you might see a lot of people who are gaining weight and they might not know why. And it might just be because of something so simple as, maybe you should skip one of those meals and restrict that time in which you're eating. Because I've read that it takes at least, and this is an at least, 10 hours to fully deplete that glucose from the liver. So like I'd say maybe 10 to 12 hours is maybe a good place to start for time to fast. But that's when you'll finally feel that, you'll get that switch. And just from personal experience, Nate could maybe explain his, but like I think we've been doing this for how many years? I'd say 2+ years for me.
I've been probably doing it for 3.
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, pretty much every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the easier ways to do this is just to skip breakfast.
Seriously.
So, I mean, it's pretty simple to do that. So, I mean, not at first. So, I mean,
yeah,
granted, it's not easy to do it at first. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to belittle that, but certainly once you get used to it, it just becomes part of your daily rhythm, part of how your body is operating. So we're very habit forming creatures, and once we develop a new habit, we tend to adapt pretty well to it. So
seriously,
yeah, about 3 years.
And the thing I noticed when I first tried this is that, like, in the morning, you have this overwhelming like urge either to eat or to maybe drink. But from what I've read, this Jason Fung, I forget, I should really know, but he was explaining how in the mornings, that hunger you're feeling is not actually hunger, it's thirst. And if you just supplement that hunger with just drinking quite a lot of water, you'll push that hunger hormone or hunger feeling back. And so like that's the thing I would do. It's like, man, I'm really, really hungry. It's my first few days of trying it. Just chug a ton of water. It honestly really helps. Like, I'm pretty famous for having this jug, and so it's like every morning, Nate as well. It's like that's something that I'd recommend, especially starting off, but also if you continue drinking a lot of water in the morning, it reduces that urge that you're going to feel of hunger, and that's not going to affect that switching of the metabolisms. Water isn't going to trigger the digestive system in any way. You kind of need water. So I found that interesting. And there's been a lot of just studies that show that if you do eat around the clock, there's a lot of detrimental effects on health and body weight. Like I was saying, it's like if you're kind of confused on why you keep gaining weight, it's like truly just reduce the time in which you're eating and try to at least hit that 10 hours throughout the 24-hour period where you're not intaking any type of food whatsoever. And I know you kind of experiment with like coffee and how that's kind of like a middle ground. Like maybe you could have some coffee in the morning, maybe not. It's hard to know, but
yeah, it's not totally clear. Technically, black coffee doesn't have any calories in it, from what I've been told. So I'll try and just have a cup or two of black coffee. And from the people I've listened to, Peter Tia and Huberman, they suggest that would not negate the benefits of fasting. So I've combined it with that. And I mean, overall, in terms of the focus and mood elevation I get from not fasting, I still have all of that. But if you wanted to be safe, if you wanted to do it, to the full extent, I'd recommend just having water and nothing else. Now, yeah, that's probably the safest option. And even your 10-hour thing, I mean, I would probably go more towards that 12 or 14-hour mark to just be sure. And this isn't something you have to do every day. And you mentioned that it does affect weight loss, and it's not a one size fits all. Oh, this is going to cure your problem. This is why you're gaining weight. But it is an interesting thing to try. And as you pointed out, there's a whole different set of biological processes that actually take place when you don't consume calories for more than that 12 to 14 hour mark. And one of those processes is that your body kind of cleans house, is the best way to put it. So your body, the actual biological processes here are a bit tricky, but to simplify it, essentially what happens is your body gets rid of old dead cells, cleans house. It helps to eliminate cells that could potentially become cancerous. So there's some data to suggest that intermittent fasting actually helps prevent cancer. Now, I know that's quite the statement, so I want to be careful to say that we don't know that for sure. There's some interesting data to suggest that that process of cleaning house might help prevent cancer cells from multiplying. So that's pretty cool in terms of that biological process. Another interesting thing is people have heard of this. It's kind of like starvation mode. It's kind of what people have heard of it. And basically you're kind of tricking your body into thinking that, we need to go find food. And I've noticed this, but there's good evidence to suggest that you actually have this increase in focus because quite literally, your body's thinking, oh my word, we need to focus, we need food. And I've been able to use that, especially at the beginning of the day. You're just more productive. You're just able to focus more. And I know you've experienced the same thing where you're just able to focus more on whatever you're doing. So
yeah, it's
a couple interesting takeaways.
Seriously, it's like the instant I notice, like the first time where I start to actually eat, I feel like a slight decrease in like focus. It's like almost like, okay, I'm satisfied. I've gotten food. Finally, I can rest. If you think about the hunter-gatherers of our ancestors, it's like when you finally were able to eat, that was now that signified that your work has been completed, because that kind of was your job. You got to go hunt, and then once you've hunted and ate, now you're okay to relax. So you might see people eat a giant meal for breakfast first thing, and then they're maybe complaining about just this drop in energy. And I'm not sure if everyone experiences that, but I definitely do when I eat too early in the morning. And that's why it's just like a double whammy of like, I'm getting the fasting benefits of metabolism, and I'm also getting that boost in focus and no energy crash. So definitely. And
that's been huge. And also for me, real quick, different people are affected by increases in, was it glucose? Was that the main one?
Yeah, glucose. It's like you're supposed to allow that glucose to like fully deplete.
Yeah,
and that's
so
kind of what's happening.
That's the thing. So you'll spike your blood glucose levels when you ingest food inherently. So I notice a particularly dramatic effect if I have carbohydrates in the middle of the day. And depending on, different people are different. And who knew? And your people are affected differently by carbohydrates, and some people notice a bigger carb crash, let's call it, than others. I notice a big one for me. If I have carbs in the middle of the day, I struggle to stay awake for the next hour or two. So that's why if I'm going to eat in the middle of the day, normally it's a light meal, and I try to stick with high protein. So whether that be steak or chicken, typically it's steak. And I'll also go to fruits too. Fruits typically don't have that same crash for me. And that's more anecdotal from my experience, but it's that same mechanism of increasing your blood glucose levels, which is very interesting and is a key thing to notice and recognize if you're noticing that crash midday, to maybe lay off the carbs a little bit and kind of see what happens. And to increase that further, just to not eat at all in the morning and see how that affects your mood and your overall productivity.
And your belly size.
Yes, and your belly size, that too. Another bit of an anecdotal thing, but I actually got my parents on this. So
Same, and actually keep going.
Yeah. So this is pretty cool. So my mom, I got both of them to start doing this, and for them, just in terms of their rhythm, it made more sense to kind of stop eating at that 6 p.m. mark. So they'd have dinner, and then they would just stop eating, and then they'd have a bit of a later breakfast, kind of early lunch. And again, this is a key point here: is it's not that important when this window is. It's more important that you hit that 12 to 14 hour mark with no caloric intake. So they started doing this, 8 months ago, something like that. I'd have to check. But regardless, they started doing this quite a while ago, and they have noticed dramatic effects. Now, it's more than just the fasting, certainly. They got more serious about exercising. They got more serious about eating more healthy in general. And one of the other effects that people will, another effect of this is inherently when you limit the time that you can eat, typically people eat less in general. So it's not always clear how much of the benefits from losing weight are from the fasting side of things and are from just the less calories in general. And there's some data to suggest in some recent studies that, I don't know if you've looked at this, but that it has less to do with the fasting in terms of decreasing fat in your body, and it has more to do with the fact that you're just consuming less calories. But regardless, in terms of a strategy for fat loss, this seems to be beneficial. So back to my parents. So they started doing this about 8 months ago or something like that, and I think my mom has lost 15 pounds. And my dad has lost 20, 25, something like that. And my mom is at a weight that she has not been at since she was like 25. And another cool thing is my mom actually has I believe it's a liver disease. And I should have checked with her to get the specifics on this. But it's expected that over the next 5 to 10 years, it would be getting worse. So they have different, they'll do tests. They'll do blood draws and tests to see if it's getting worse or not. And I remember she told me that she went to the doctor about a year ago, and they were saying, hey, we're going to do a checkup in 6 months. We're expecting it to get worse. We're expecting your markers probably not to be as good. And, she's on a medication, et cetera. And she started doing the intermittent fasting, and more specifically, just more consistent exercise and just being smart about what she eats. And she lost 15 pounds. And she went back to the doctor, and the doctor was absolutely astonished. She was like, all of your metrics are, 50% better or something like that. It was incredible. And the doctor said, like, what'd you do? And my mom explained it. And I remember she said that the doctor was like, if everyone did what you did, I would lose half my customer base, which is an interesting statement. And because it's free to do what she was doing. But anyway, but on a positive note, anecdotally, my parents have had a great benefit from this. And just that, that schedule and being intentional about it. They've also talked about increases in focus when in that fasted state too. So that's pretty cool. So a little bit of anecdotal stuff there. Kind of want to make a shout out to my mom. So
it's amazing. It's awesome
cool.
news. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it wasn't for Rhonda Patrick, maybe none of this would ever happen.
Yeah, seriously. Rhonda Patrick was the first person that you and I both found her pretty similarly, but on Joe Rogan, and she kind of introduced this, and man, been quite the change. So
seriously, like there's 2 other studies I kind of want to mention. The first one that I think I heard from Rhonda was they studied just rats, which not humans but similar, and it showed that just by restricting the time in which they're eating, not changing the amount of food or not changing the quality, those rats, they decreased their body fat percentage and also increased their muscle mass. I think it was like 2-in-1 combo. And I was like, wow, is that an interesting finding? Like, I'm not exactly sure why that's happened, but that was honestly one of the motivating things. Like, I think 2 years ago, where I was like, I'm going to have to check this out seriously. And I think I'm blessed that I've always kind of been small or skinny. So it's like, I haven't really noticed if there's been a benefit, but I'm certain there has been. And I guess the second study I wanted to talk about it was done on people actually in the Middle East. They engage in something called Ramadan fasting. It's like a fasting for religious reasons. And it is a 16-hour fast. Like, they're actually fasting. Yeah, 16 hours. I'm not exactly certain what time of the day, but there's two different terms that one has to know when talking about this. There's two different types of cholesterols. There's the high-density lipoprotein cholesterol and low-density lipoprotein cholesterol. And it's kind of interesting, but you want your high-density cholesterol to increase, and you want your low-density to decrease. And when both of those things happen, you decrease the risk of cardiovascular disease. So it was an interesting, it's another way in which, if you actually fast for 14 to 16 hours, you're getting the dual-edged benefit of increasing your high-density lipoprotein cholesterol and getting the decrease of low-density lipoprotein cholesterol. Overall, it's just another way to decrease your risk of cardiovascular disease. And I think that's just this whole umbrella of category of talking about these things is like how to live a longer, healthier life, how to decrease your risk of dying from cancer, heart disease, and extending the time in your life in which you're healthy. And it's just all four of these just have so many different studies that are supporting. You could keep digging and digging, but I just found that interesting as well. And
yeah, no, that's pretty cool.
And there's just like this interesting slew of benefits also that I'll just kind of skim over. I don't even fully know how it all works, but there's like this giant chart showing, and I was just looking up before we did this, of like how just like 7 other benefits of this intermittent fasting. It helps improve your sleep and increase your stress response or stress resilience, improves your endurance. Maybe that has to do with the hunting factor, where it's like you're forced to run and find more food, etc. Not exactly sure why. Also reduces the heart aging, which is probably ties in with this like lipoprotein cholesterol study with the Ramadan fasting. And it also ties in with this, it actually helps prevent brown fat from turning into white fats, the same kind of fats you're talking about in the first half of this episode, where it's like the white fats are the fats, that are found in your belly or in your thighs or the parts of the body where you might not want them. But the brown fat is kind of like an internal insulation that helps protect your inner organs. And this just helps prevent that brown fat from just changing into white fat. And it also helps lower white fat inflammation. Like we're talking about, if your arms are a little feeling fat, it's like there's so many benefits here. And I'll just say a few more. It like helps your gut actually has more time to, it said that if you eat 3 times a day and eat around the clock, your gut can actually have leaky gut syndrome, where it's like it doesn't have enough time to actually strengthen. It's like it's constantly being stressed with having to digest. And if you're giving it a break, you're actually increasing the strength of your gut lining, and then helps counter that. There's something called fatty liver, where the nice thing about fasting in this way is that you actually reduce the glucose all the way so that your liver can almost, like you said, have that reset. But if you never allowed it to reset, there's going to be fat particles, brown fat turning into white fat right on that liver. And that doesn't sound very good. And so like, it's just endless, it seems, amounts of ways in which intermittent fasting or time restricted eating just benefits you in so many ways. And they're probably still studying it as we speak. There's going to be more coming down the pipeline, but I really recommend y'all try this. Like you said, it's low cost, it's easy. Well, it's not
Zero
easy in the
cost.
beginning. Yeah, it actually probably decreases your cost because you're not
Probably.
eating as much or as dumbly. And yeah,
And you're more, if you're one of those hyper efficient, hyper productive people, by having 2 meals instead of 3, you get an extra 20, 30 minutes maybe of time that you can be doing other things, which is not a perfect translation, but something to consider.
and
So-
in a focused state of hunting mode as well. And so,
Yep,
yeah,
increases
definitely
overall productivity. Quick on that inflation piece too.
inflammation or
Oh yeah,
inflation.
inflation. Oh, gosh.
Bob
It's
White.
on the mind these days. Inflammation. My mom noticed that too. Another anecdote, I know, but it's kind of cool to talk about. So she knows too. She had a bunch of joint inflammation, and she noticed that decreased as well. And a lot of people, or a lot of the studies rather, have shown that there's been some decreases in inflammation. And inflammation, just real quick on inflammation, it's not like inflammation is, it sounds bad. It's not like it's inherently bad. It's a natural process of the body. The question is when are you, or when do you delve into a realm where it's no longer productive, where the level of inflammation is counterproductive and actually detrimental? And it looks like a lot of people today have levels of inflammation that aren't productive and are detrimental. So, and that's part of the same idea here is when you're constantly in a state of, you're consuming calories constantly. It's the same thing with your gut. Your body just never has time to clean house. And this is almost the psychology, the overarching point, I suppose you could call it here, is your body just doesn't have time to enter into those biological processes that would happen to kind of recalibrate, to kind of set back up again, for lack of a better way of phrasing it. So it also that can also help counter inflammation as well. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, it kind of, like you said, if the doctor would have prescribed something like that, you might not be out of the job. But, if you want to visit the doctor less and live a longer, healthier life, maybe try this out. I just keep, trying to convince, but I guess anything else you want to cover on this time restricted? Like, I'm just trying to think of anything else.
Not specifically. I think we got it pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I say that, and as we've mentioned a couple times here, it's just the body of scientific literature on this is extensive, so it's a lot. We're gonna miss a lot, and if you want more in-depth analysis, highly recommend the people that I mentioned in the first part: Dr. Andrew Huberman, Peter Attia, and Dr. Rhonda Patrick. There's some good sources for this type of information.
Seriously. And so, yeah, the fourth and final thing that we've been doing, but we've been doing other things, like you said, maybe reducing carbohydrates or eating steak or whatever. But the fourth one we're covering is high-intensity interval training, or HIIT training. And just a quick definition of HIIT training that I was able to find commonalities on: short bursts of 85% or more like exercise mixed with short rest periods of 5 minutes or less. Keyword or less. You probably don't want to be even resting 5 minutes. That's kind of like the max right there. But yeah, like if you search HIIT workout, you might see someone swinging a kettlebell or doing push-ups or burpees, or it really can be kind of whatever you want it to be. But I guess the key is that you're almost going until your heart and lungs, you're going until you're breathing heavily, sweating, and pretty much reaching your limit, and then resting for a short period of time and forcing yourself to do it again and do it again. And the interesting thing is, from what I've found, is that you can get an insane workout in within, like, honestly, 20 to 30 minutes. Like, by that time, if you're really going hard and not taking that many rests, it's like your time in the gym is almost complete, practically, if you wanted it to be. And yeah, that's just kind of anecdotal from what I've found, but it's, I guess, I want to talk about, there's like 5 or 6 different things that this study that I was looking at talked about it. They saw improvements in metabolic function, so just more reasons why, or just another factor of how doing activities like these improve your metabolism and probably help you reduce your fat. It says weight loss. It also helps people reach a body composition that they might want, like helps build muscle and obtain a physique that is attractive to look at or attractive in their own eyes and what they'd want to achieve, and helps increase muscle tissue oxidative capacity. Like you're actually getting more blood to flow through your muscles and getting more oxygen so that they can actually work better and perform better in everyday life and during your exercises. And that was kind of interesting. And it also talked about how it increased insulin response, which I don't even fully understand. It's something to do with that glucose levels. And then the fourth, go ahead.
I can quick touch on it, the limited amount that I know, that it helps your body react to that increase in glucose. So that it isn't as dramatic as an effect on your body. So it helps moderate it so that your body can handle that increase better, is the basic idea from how I understand it. So keep going, but yeah.
Yeah, and then I also talked about how it helps with heart function as well. And one thing that I noticed in studying is that, I'll just kind of explain this study, which shows, if I can even, there it is. Yeah, like they took a meta-study of 85 different studies, which had thousands of different participants, and they had them do high-intensity interval training exercises, and it showed that 87% of these thousands of participants showed an increase in their VO2 max. And VO2 max is like a metric that kind of shows how healthy your heart is, how effective, like, can you hold, like, I don't even fully understand, but the math is like you take your resting heart, or you take your max heart rate dividing by your resting heart rate, and you multiply it by 15. That's how you get VO2 max. But the higher your VO2 max is, just kind of symbolizes how healthy your heart and lungs are, and how, like, if you're able to do a lot of HIIT exercises in tandem, you're going to have a high VO2 max. And when you have a high VO2 max, you're just going to decrease your chances for cardiovascular disease, because on a regular basis, you're actually stressing your heart in that strategic way that we keep talking about. And it's like if someone were to not exercise for a long period of time and then they were to dive into something like this, a very intense workout, their heart could almost be stressed enough that they could have a heart attack. So it's like that's a con, but like you want to build up into this. But as you do this more and more, your heart just starts getting more and more healthy, and your VO2 max will just keep increasing. And it's just VO2 max, if it's high, your longevity in life seems to be high. And that's that's one of the most strong metrics that there is in regards to like heart health. So really recommend that. And, this also helps with like cardiovascular, the vascular part. Like I've noticed personally, like my ability to like sit on a bike and go pretty hard for 20 to 30 minutes, like that ability to do that has increased. Also, like going on longer runs, or even just increasing the time I'm doing these HIIT workouts, I've truly noticed like, my lungs feel like they're in pretty good shape overall. Like I noticed that. Like I feel like I'm almost, maybe not quite to the level of like cross country Harley back in high school, but like
sure.
It seems as if I'm prolonging the life of my lungs and keeping them healthy, and it's been pretty interesting. And so yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the big takeaway there is VO2 max is simply a proxy for heart and cardiovascular health. So if you have a higher VO2 max, you're going to be more healthy in the cardiovascular dimension. And as you point out, compared to something like weightlifting, which is more static, where you're just not stressing your cardiovascular system as much, something like a HIIT workout will kind of hit both. So you're going to get some weight training in, depending on what kind of HIIT workout you're doing, but you're also going to be able to stress your heart more. So in some sense, you get the best of both worlds. And, this has a lot to do, one of the caveats here is this has a lot to do with like what you're going for in terms of training. If you're going for 1 rep max deadlifts and squats, you're probably not going to want to do as many HIIT workouts. There's still probably some benefit from doing them. But that may not be your primary type of workout for sure. But let's say that you're someone more in the middle camp. You just want to be healthier, increased mood, healthier and happier. This kind of hits some of that more muscle building side of things as well as more cardiovascular side of things. So you can imagine on one end would be weight training, weightlifting, squat, bench, deadlift, lifting weights statically. And then on the other end might be running or biking. And this is kind of a merging of the two in some sense. And of course, you can incorporate whatever you want to do. The possibilities are endless. You could do more weight training. You could do more running. You could whatever you want to do. But this specifically, this kind of HIIT workout helps to kind of merge the two, which is one reason that I've personally been attracted to it, is someone that really wants the benefits from both of those camps, because strength is a key metric for longevity in life.
And so is cardiovascular health. Well, you have to say the other side. Keep going.
Exactly. I mean, both are. How much muscle mass you have and strength, which are basically directly correlated. And then along with cardiovascular health are some of the biggest things in longevity in overall health span. So that's pretty cool and is a key takeaway here for sure.
Seriously. And yeah, just another thing that was interesting. It's like you have an opioid-like release after a HIIT workout. Some studies have shown, and similar to that cold plunge or after the sauna, there's just your mood is just enhanced. And I could say personally, I have a true addiction to going into that gym, going as hard as possible. You'll see Nate and I going in there together or separately and just putting it all on the line, making the mat sweaty, and just afterwards I just feel truly just amazing. It's a true addiction. I feel happy, healthy. It's hard to really say, but I'm sure you could say the same.
Yep, for sure.
And I noticed there's a kind of a funny joke in one of our classes last year of I made a little comment on how if you increase your exercise, if you exercise regularly throughout your life, you're going to decrease the risk and rate at which you cognitively decline. So by the time you're 25, your brain stops developing and you start to actually see decreases in your cognitive ability. And if you exercise regularly, you actually starve off that decrease and you decrease the decrease. Decrease the decrease. So it's
you can basically stop it.
Seriously.
Basically. Yeah, for a long time. And it's the other quick thing is it's basically the only way, effective way at least, that we know to do this is you have to have a healthy cardiovascular system and overall healthy body essentially in order to remain cognitively sharp as long as possible. It's a fact. So and not many people really realize that it's a non-negotiable. You will become dumber, effectively speaking. You will lose some cognitive ability unless you do consistent exercise. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I feel like that mantra should be shouted everywhere. Yeah. Schools, colleges, but you just don't hear it much. But an interesting go ahead.
Oh, just real quick. One other real quick thing is this is the other big point here with really any kind of physical exercise, but HIIT workouts too, because they're kind of the combination of the two camps, is that the single greatest way that we know to decrease all-cause mortality, which again essentially is decrease the risk from dying from all the things. The single greatest way that we know to decrease that is consistent physical exercise. There's no other protocol that has as dramatic as an effect on your health span, longevity, quality of life. I mean, that should be shouted to the rooftops. Everyone knows, exercise is good for you. Everyone knows that. But it's not just good for you.
It's required.
It is the single greatest thing you can do for your health span. So that's just huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
So.
Sure, totally. And I found this interesting. I learned it today. The more intense of a workout you have, the more neurons that will grow in your brain and be recycled, and the less likely you'll get to have Alzheimer's. So it kind of really ties in, but it's like if you're working out, but if you work out even more intensely, you're actually decreasing the decrease of cognitive decline even faster, if you know what I mean. So it's like, and that's kind of I didn't even know that. So it's like, the more intense you're working out, the more your neurons are being regenerated. And it's very interesting. And I was seeing Tim Ferriss and Rhonda Patrick talking about how people who are wanting like great body composition of like looking fit, looking strong, being shredded, or whatever people want to look, it's called body composition. And they found that even just doing kettle swings 2 or 3 times a week instead of going to the gym and lifting weights for an hour 5 days a week, you actually see more of a better result in body composition doing those kettle swings. They didn't dive into why, but I was like, that is really interesting, because it's like just 2 or 3 days of doing an intense swing where you're really using your strength, but you're also forcing your heart and lungs to really work. You receive a better result. And I've noticed, like, just for example, like I used to do a lot of powerlifting and I was pretty strong and pretty big. And now I've kind of just dropped that entirely, honestly, in a lot of ways, and have just transitioned over to the HIIT. And I've noticed myself, like my body composition is just as strong, or maybe even feeling stronger than before. And I'm not throwing around as heavy a weights, but I'm engaging in these heavy swings and burpees and whatnot. So I just found that really interesting. And another thing that it's like, you can be so efficient with your time if you only need 2 or 3 times a week going to the gym, and also the time you're in the gym. You don't have to spend 2.5 hours in the gym lifting, resting for 5 minutes, lifting, resting for 5 minutes. It's more of you can get your workout completed within 30 minutes, period, if you're going hard. And people like me and you who are busy and who want to be very productive with our time, that actually is so in our favor. And that's another honestly huge reason why I love it, because it's like I don't have to spend 2 to 3 hours in the gym. I can spend an hour and a half and conquer my workout, conquer my sauna, and be out of there feeling amazing. So yeah, these are just some of the benefits I've noticed and some of the studies that I've found to kind of defend why I'm such a huge fan of these HIIT workouts. And
yeah, I've noticed anecdotally, and again, the data suggests this, that I actually have my mood is increased positively more so than it was when I would just do weightlifting. So I still would get, I'd feel better after doing a weightlifting session for sure. But I definitely have noticed I feel the best / better than back then. Now I'm doing HIIT workouts more often. So, and I still do a little bit more weightlifting than you do, but we all have, again, it's back to all have different goals, and there's no one protocol. There's no one way of doing things that works the best. That's for sure. People are inherently complicated and different, and you have to tailor your specific strategy for you. So that's a very important point here as well.
Yeah. And another thing I would just add, just as like, you feel like an absolute beast out on the gym floor with a kettlebell, swinging it. It's like, I feel like I noticed that, there's a lot of people in the gym and they're all kind of standing there. There's a lot of them on their phones. It doesn't seem like that many people, from my experience, are like really going hard. So it's like you almost become the center of attention, kind of not intentionally, just because you're going so hard. And like, honestly, I feel like that almost boosts the mood too for me, where it's like, yes, I feel like, I'm in the gym. It's like, who's the top dog? Who's the alpha? And I don't know who is, but in the workout that I'm doing, people are looking at me because I'm making noise, and I'm like, yeah, come join me. Either way, I feel like a person who feels like a beast. I don't know. It gives me even more of a boost. Almost. It's kind of hard to explain, but
there's
you
definitely
feel
a psychological component.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, there's a psychological component when you're drenched in sweat, you barely can breathe, and you're sitting over there, and people are casually talking on their phones after a 5-minute rest after a bench press. And I can't even use my phone because my hands are so sweaty. So it's like, okay.
Yeah.
It is funny. There's a comical element too. And man, that doesn't mean that they're doing anything wrong.
Nope.
And frankly, I could go a lot harder most days, but it is kind of comical that we talk about our roommate Jordan too, and Jordan, we got to give him a little credit. He kind of got us into HIIT workouts to a certain extent.
Seriously.
And I mean, every time I see him in the gym, I just feel like a little bitch. I mean, oh my word. That guy goes hard. I remember we had a conversation about whether or not he should bring 2 shirts to the gym because within like 20 minutes the man would be completely sweated through his whole shirt, and it just he's just going so hard. So you got to love it. So he's a huge source of motivation too. So shout out to Jordan.
Definitely.
Let's go 6'1" kicks. Yep.
Check them out. But yeah. Either way, like, do you have anything else you want to cover in regards to these? Like, I think we gave a pretty solid overview so far, but
yeah, pretty solid overview. Maybe a couple closing thoughts I have just to kind of do a little overview here. So I mean, the central idea here behind all these things, and we talked about this a little bit already, is that there's a massive difference between stress that you take on voluntarily and stress that is put upon you against your will. And it turns out that we are load-bearing creatures, that we need to stress ourselves on a consistent basis. We're actually designed that way, and that's good for you. Getting that mild stress hormetic response from doing that is a net good. And that's kind of at the center of all these different protocols, whether that be intentional exposure to heat, to cold, physical exercise, and the restricted, the fasting. So that intentional aspect is huge and produces a lot of positive effects. And again, another big point here is there's not a one size fits all approach. Every person is different and is at a different stage in these, and we certainly wouldn't want you to jump right in to the point where you're going to hurt yourself. And a good rule of thumb is you want to be uncomfortable, but you don't want to be to the point of where you're thinking, oh man, is my health at risk? Is my safety at risk here? So that's very important. You want to ease into these protocols. You want to start small and build, because that would be the best for you overall for sure. So those are just 2 conclusions that I've come to with this.
Yeah. Conclusion of it doesn't cost really any money. It doesn't take too much time. And then also just hammering down if you want to decrease your risk of having Alzheimer's, engaging in working out truly is something you really should do.
It's the number one way. Period.
It's if you care about your potential future spouse or future kids, it's an interesting argument of do you want to be mentally there when you're older? And the best way to do that is to be really consistent with exercise and probably some of these other things we're mentioning too. But that's really just a hammer that we got to hammer. But
And another quick note too is, for me specifically, the massive overall increase in mood in terms of stress and anxiety and even just negative emotion, doing these different protocols, there's no doubt that I am a happier human being because I'm doing these protocols. And that's just massive, that you have that ability to actively decrease your stress, improve your overall well-being and sense of well-being by stressing your body in these ways. So that's been huge for me.
Seriously. Yeah, I think that was a great overview. And if, people are listening on mine, go check out Nate's podcast, because we cover the first two aspects of hot and cold, and just honestly, it's a pretty long discussion, but it's like diving into some of the complexities in our experience. And I truly, honestly want the best for people. And I hope people listening really do maybe take some of this to heart, because, you know, if you respect us in any way, you might respect our opinions on this. It's like, it's helped us so much. We're happier than ever, less stressed than ever. It's like body composition better than ever. Just so many different pros. It's like, I hope that some of y'all try this out and let us know. Like, if you want to hit the cold plunge, let us know. Like, where should I hit a sauna? You know, come to me with questions if you want. Nate is always open as well. And like, you have the power to make whatever life you want out of the life you have. And you have the power to feel however you want to feel based off of how you act. And so if you want to feel amazing and live a long, healthy life, these 4 methods might truly be the way to do that.